welcome to The Spiritual Entrepreneur. This is Devi Adea, your host, and today we have Kristine Grant joining us. Kristine Grant, MFT, is a marriage family therapist and relationship expert and author of the forthcoming book, Relationshift, the right words for what you really want to say. She is the creator of the Relationshift Process that helps people resolve conflicts and learn conscious communication skills in order to create positive connections in all their relationships, including romance, work, family, etc. She is also the creator of Inspired Heart Letters and has helped clients write letters to heal their relationships. She's appeared on numerous television and radio shows, including CBS, ABC, Fox, the CW channel, and is a popular speaker nationally. She is a beautiful spiritual entrepreneur who has done a lot of work in helping with relationships, with bullying, with really helping with conflict in our world to resolve it in a beautiful and soulful way. And she is a delightful spiritual entrepreneur. I'm really excited to have this conversation with her today on the show. So welcome to the show, Kristine.
Hi, Devi. Gosh, it's so wonderful to be here. I've been looking forward to our sharing.
Me too. Me as well. Yeah, it's such an important and perfect topic for right now. And it's an evergreen topic, right? We always have relationships. Yeah. So you have a really beautiful story. I'd love to start there if we could today, and just how you kind of have evolved into the work that you're doing now. So why don't we just dive in? So tell us a little bit about your background and how you've gotten to doing what you're doing now.
Okay. Well, as I consider myself and my own path in life, I became spiritually aware, and I'm still on that path, hopefully becoming more and more conscious, aware, and living more within divinity, divine grace, as a result of some of the conflicts and hurdles I myself have gone through in this lifetime. I do contend that our souls do sign up sometimes for less than comfy, cushy experiences, ultimately for our own soul's evolvement, but also to gather compassion, wisdom, and to have the wherewithal to help others. And that's kind of where my path has led me. Like I said, I've had many, many professions, and when I got married and lived out in Riverside County, Lake Elsinore. I used to call it Lake Elsewhere.
They have a lot of skydiving there, right? That's like a big skydiving.
Yeah, and this was years ago when there was just really nothing. I decided to go back to school and become a marriage and family therapist, and was in private practice. My daughter came along, Alana, and my marriage unfortunately didn't last. And so I became a single mom when Alana was under the age of 2. And through that, reinventing myself once again, going back and getting post-grad degree or credentials in school psychology. I figured that was a good route to take, being a single mom, to have those summers off and to have the kind of hourly schedule that would really complement being a parent and all that. So everything seemed to be going comparatively well. And my daughter, when she was in middle school, unfortunately was being terribly picked on by quote unquote mean girls. Mm-hmm. And because she was an only child, and also we had adopted her at birth, my heart just went out to her, and I took a very keen interest in relational aggression, starting out with kids, which led to me creating the Be Friendship Focused guide, which imparts subtle energy exercises in language that's very palatable for public schools. And I was very proud of this. I self-published it. My daughter, Alana, and I created the A-C power cards, her little and my little paintings, and an inspirational thought for every letter of the alphabet as a conversation opener to kind of break the ice with kids that were feeling uncomfortable in their communication. At any rate, both of these items, fortunately, were picked up by Youth Light Books, an educational publisher. And in the meantime, I had gone around the country speaking on this subject. Well, I went back to my life as a school psychologist and being a mom and other hobbies and things that I enjoyed doing. And one day I had a neighbor approach me because she was dating a man who she liked very well as a person, but she wasn't feeling that chemistry, shall we say. And so she didn't want to hurt his feelings. And he actually was a nice guy. He was an attorney. And she said, given my druthers, I would love it if he would help me with a legal problem I'm having. But he keeps leaving flowers at my door and he's so nice and I don't want to hurt his feelings. And I said, are you kidding, Janie? Please, you've got to be straight with this guy because you wouldn't want someone to treat you like that. If you think there's some romance that's possibly going to bud out of this exchange and then you're really not on board with that, he deserves to know. She said, I know you're right, but I suck at that. I'm not good at it. I probably would end up hurting his feelings and feeling pretty stressed out myself, even embarrassed. So I suggested that she, instead of writing a cold email or a text message, because I think in this day and age that unfortunately has become a substitute along with the emoticons and all that for heartfelt thoughts, I asked her if she could please just write a note and put it in a pretty card and hopefully personally give it to him with just, by saying, I'm sorry, I'm not really good at speaking my truth. I'm learning, but I've written something down. And she said, well, that's a great idea. So she writes this letter, shows it to me, and I was blown away. It was really bad. I said, oh my gosh, you're going to hurt his feelings and this is not good. It's very like groveling almost, and it's unflattering. It's just no. So I grabbed a pen and I quickly wrote down what I thought what she should say. She was so pleased. She then gave him what I had written, and it turned out to be quite a positive outcome. They became good friends. He did all of her legal filings, by the way, for free. And she was just so happy with it. She felt like the rock had been lifted off her shoulder. And then she started asking me over time to write more letters. Her friends were calling me to write their letters for their issues. And then 4 years down the road, a woman approached me, referred to me, her ex-husband, who was not such a nice man, was stalking her. And even though she had a restraining order, she was a little afraid. She walked in fear. And anyhow, long story short, I wrote her letter to him and he conveyed a reassuring message. And that was over 10 years ago. And luckily, she's never heard from him again.
Wow.
Well, she was so pleased. She said, oh my gosh, I have to pay you. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, you've saved my life. I can now sleep at night, And at that point, I realized that this was really a viable service.
I guess.
So what So what I do, I'm like a Cyrano de Bergerac, if anybody remembers who that was, who fell in love with Roxanne. And he was the guy with the big nose that wrote the compelling letters that her handsome suitor, Christian, gave her. And she fell in love with the letters. Well, I do that. But I'm able to tap into a client's heart, their higher self, in order to leap over the ego and all the stuff that gets in our way, the fear factor, and write a compelling message that really seems to work quite well.
Beautiful. I love that. And it is so true. I think so many of us have a hard time finding our words. It's like, I know what I feel. I know what I want to say, and I don't want to hurt the person. I don't want to say something that would be out of an emotion that maybe like I later would regret. Like there's all the things that show up. We want to be coming from a kind and loving place, but we also want to have the message delivered. And so I think it's beautiful that you have a gift for that, because that's not a gift that I think a lot of people in humanity really have. And I feel like it's something we need more of right now, especially.
Well, how I look at it, Debbie, is people, including myself, by the way, if I have my own relationship challenge going on, I have to step so far back because as us human types, humanoids, we tend to go into autopilot of fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fight side, when we're having an issue with someone, that looks like anger,
Mm-hmm.
rage, control type maneuvers. The flight part is the running away, the denial, the pretending it really didn't happen, or shrugging your shoulders and laughing it off like it's no big deal, when actually the emotions become an imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And we start walking around with all this baggage that we're either huffing and puffing and we're upset about all the time, and that colors our day and how we live life, or we're trying to scoop it under the carpet, and yet we still feel this heavy, oppressive kind of energy because we haven't honored ourselves. We haven't cleared the way, so to speak. So I think healthy communications there's no way around it. We were given the voice, we were given our ability to communicate, whether verbally or in a note, not per chance, but to really use that to its highest good.
That's beautiful. And so what is that middle place? Like that place where we are like consciously communicating rather than being in like the fight or flight space? Like, how does one even put themselves in the place of having those types of conversations? Obviously, they can definitely hire you, right? Because that's a gift that you have clearly where you can intuit with the other person, how it's going to land, what they're feeling. Let's say though they're in a moment right then when they need to kind of put themselves in a place of being able to communicate where they aren't in fight flight. What do you suggest someone does?
Okay, so the central thought, the goal for getting into that kind of space where you can actually come up with solutions and be creative is to be vulnerable. So we're being vulnerable. We're open. When we're open, we trust. And we don't have to be perfect. Let yourself off the hook. People appreciate and they feel more comfortable around the quote unquote real type person who has, real human frailties and vulnerabilities. And they're not fearful of being transparent. And that's how we get close. And that's how intimacy is formed and bonds between people. If we hold ourselves up that we're perfect, then it's almost like we're scary to be around because maybe the people in our circle think, wow, he or she, they're so aloof. They're so, quote, stuck up. I mean, when we were in school, you may have remembered kids that left that impression. And when you actually spoke with that child, that student, you would come to find out they're not stuck up. They're not aloof. They're extremely shy. They're afraid. They're afraid of not being perfect. So that would be step number one. When I talk about the ego, and that's certainly part of the ego mindset, I suggest that, and I have this in my book, and I actually even have a free mini ebook on my website I'll share with the audience later that helps people to upgrade their writing skills and to write more compelling verbal and or written messages. But anyhow, so when we can kind of rise above the slings and arrows and be open to problem solve. In other words, you're at work and your boss is, quote, on your case, or you feel like you're not accepted by coworkers. You might offer, how can I help the situation? What would you like me to do? Can we problem solve this situation together? So coming up with creative solutions in any relationship matter, that is so positive because it comes from that place of love and honor, respect, all of that. And with a deep desire to be closer, to have a smoother experience, and to let go of pain, anguish, and hostility and all that other stuff. When we are confronted, and I have, this is actually out of my children's book which is on the self-empowerment, relational aggression, centered on the idea of bullying. And you can certainly reflect in the world the type of bullying that's going on across the planet. And from day one, whether it's overt or covert manipulations, now we live in a very vocalized world where some of the rules of engagement are actually, have dropped considerably. But at the same time, it's almost refreshing in some ways to say, I'd rather know where someone's coming from than having them hide behind a bush and just, throwing out fairy dust when it's not real. But in my book with the kids, what I suggest is if you perceive that someone is going to be confrontive or try to embarrass you or criticize you or whatever, is that you look them in the eye with no negative body language whatsoever. And you think about something else that's really fabulous. Like for the kids, I say, think about going to a Black Eyed Peas concert and you've got back row tickets, backstage passes, excuse me. And oh, by the way, you're going to Nordy's on the way and for shopping and you're in a limousine or something that's really off the top, something you've won the lottery, whatever. So you get your frequency up. You're not in that fear, stressed out, kind of apprehensive mindset, but you're actually thinking about something wonderful and fabulous. So that raises the frequency. You're actually looking at the person, making eye contact, but not giving off any negative body language. So you're not shrugging, you're not looking down at the ground, you're not rolling your eyes, you're not, giving any kind of gestures that are off-putting. And while the person may be verbally confronting you or maybe even attacking you verbally, you're not really taking that energy in. And after 15 seconds, because after 15 seconds or so, we then are open to actually connecting with their energy field. So before you get to that point, then you just stop the conversation and in a very calm fashion, you can say, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Why don't we talk about this another time? This particular little simple strategy might sound odd or strange or even corny, but I'll tell you, it works. It really works. The person that's in the fight phase, the anger, or they're trying to chi-vampire your power or what have you, they're trying to suck your energy, they're feeling like they're being heard when you're not really listening. You're not taking in that toxic, negative stuff. Instead, you're being a diplomat about it and just acknowledging, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's schedule some time where we can really sit down and talk about this, which translates to, I'm open to problem solve. How can I help you? All those other meta messages. So that's one little trick that people might pick up on.
Those are great tricks. I love those. So it's, I think it's tough to put yourself in a vulnerable place when you feel fight, flight, right? So is there obviously you're raising your vibration by shifting what you're focusing on, and that probably helps a lot too. Is there some a practice that you can do maybe when you're not even in the moment that helps you to kind of maybe be able to make that shift more easily from the unconscious kind of reactive place to being more vulnerable?
Yes, well, I'm sure this is not anything new and revolutionary when I say this, but living in gratitude is a daily practice that if everyone on the planet did, I think we'd see a tremendous shift. So maintaining a state of gratitude, which is very soothing to the soul. And also, as I put it, our angels, our spirit guides, whatever someone's belief system is about that, I trust and know that we do have influence and help from our angels, I'll just say. And And how I coin it is, well, they're up there. Let's say they're up there in heaven or some other realm, and they're just sitting around picking their wings. Until you go, excuse me, I need some help down here. And actually give them a goal, desire, and gratitude for the assistance that they're giving. So that works for me time and time and time again. I will share with you, this is something very personal, but like I said, I went through a lot in my life to get to where I'm at right now, and hopefully I'm still reaching for the stars. But
yes, you are.
When I was a teenager, and I grew up in San Clemente, and I was actually I was in the military, believe it or not. I was like the original Private Benjamin, and I was in Germany, and I came home on my leave, and I went to mail a letter and was followed on the beach by Marines and viciously raped and beaten and dragged under the railroad tracks. And it was a 4-hour ordeal whereby I was told I was going to be killed, how they were going to kill me, how I would be in the newspaper. A very frightening, horribly frightening experience. And yet this was the very moment in my life when that power of positive thinking emerged for me. I found my intuitive self saying, okay, these guys are like savage animals. How do you treat a wild animal? You don't scream. You don't freak out. You don't act more upset than you are. And I actually had to calm them down. Wow. It's okay. Stroking the guy's back, if you can believe it. It's okay. I really like you. La la. And I'll tell you, it worked. And I'm here today to tell about it. Every step at 10 o'clock at night, going down the beach in San Clemente, every step on the railroad track, I said to myself, I affirmed to myself, it's all okay, and you're going to live.
Wow.
Okay. And so that very frightening, disturbing, horrific experience, the gift wrapped in sandpaper, as they say, was that I started to gain a sense of my own power, my own personal power. Here I'm this tiny little girl, little beach bunny type, and I was able to move past that. And then as other experiences came up in my life, I drew from the past, knowing I had that core power within me, like the unsinkable Molly Brown, where I was able to stand in it and with the grace of God, allow good things to happen. The other piece to that story that was also my saving grace, and I really want to share this with the audience because I'm sure I'm not the only person that's had terrifying experiences, is I did not hold anger towards the perpetrators. For whatever reason, my soul decided at that young age, a teenager, that I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were mentally disturbed, and it had nothing to do with me.
Wow.
If the audience walks away with nothing else but that piece of information that I'm sharing right now, it's so powerful. I hope that they really take that in. I can't stress it enough, because part of the human experience is we all go through frightening times on one level or another, whether it's you're facing bankruptcy, or you've lost a child, or you're on the brink of divorce. There's crises that we have to stand up to and move past. And if we can really have that perfect relationship with ourselves first, that relationship that says, I am who I am. I walk my talk. I would want to have someone like me to be my best friend. That's a good gauge. Because if you have that first relationship with yourself where you honor yourself, that frequency, that other people will pick up on it.
It's true.
And you won't have those issues. And if something comes up, you'll deal with it.
Mm-hmm. It's a really profound, first of all, I'm so sorry that happened. And I do realize that sometimes those are the things that are meant to happen in order for us to step into our work. And we kind of go through that with that knowingness, but just the beautiful way that you handled that, and the fact that you had that same gift so clearly to me when you're sharing that story of, how you knew what to do. Like you knew, I wouldn't deal with them this way. I wouldn't deal with them that way. Because even when you're writing letters for people now, you can sense what the response is going to be of the soul on the other side. Taking the ego out of it, you could totally come from a soul's perspective on how to commune from a soul to soul place, and having that gift.
It's amazing. I had this one man. I've told this story before, but I just love this story. This man called me up. He had a son who was in the finance business abroad. The son lived in Sweden, and the son was due to visit his parents in San Diego. They hadn't seen him in 3 years. And the father said to the son, well, when you get to the airport, make sure you rent a car so mom and I don't have to deal with it. And so when the son arrived, I guess somehow he either forgot the message or he didn't hear it, but he called his folks and said, where are you? I've just flown like 15 hours. Hello. And the father said, I told you to get a car, and got into the old pattern, power struggle pattern. And the son said, really? Great. Don't worry about it, Dad. I have it handled. And he did not see his parents for the whole 3-week visit. Instead, he went to stay at his grandmother's, who happened to be the arch enemy of the father, the mean old mother-in-law. And she was leaving these taunting messages on the phone, such as, wow, Anthony looks fabulous. We just had dinner at his favorite restaurant, and put it that kind of thing. So the young guy, he's in his 30s, and he goes back east back to Europe without seeing his folks. 2 months goes by, no word from the son, and the father is just steamed. He calls me up and says, Kristine, I need a letter, and I need a letter of shame. I need a letter of guilt. And I stopped him in his tracks, and I said, whoa, you know what I'm picking up right now is you've been meddling in your son's financial affairs, giving him unsolicited advice. Oh, wait, I got another hit. He's 35. He's not married. You want grandkids. You're upset with that as well. I said, don't worry, I've got your letter. And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. I can't believe you're talking to me like that. And I said, is it true? And the father stopped and said, okay, I grew up in Queens, New York. My dad died when I was 9, and my mom never worked. And I had to figure out how we were going to survive. So I got a job stocking shelves in a hardware store and selling newspapers. And at that moment, I realized, oh my gosh, that's your love language. You want to protect. And so you're nagging and protecting and insisting people behave certain ways it comes from a place of really caring and wanting to make sure that they don't step out of line, because you're afraid they might not survive underneath it all, as funny as that might sound. And so I said, all right, I'm going to write your letter, provided you honor 2 things. Your son doesn't need your advice unless he asks for it. And 2, his personal life is just that. So don't bug him about that either. Are we in agreement? Yes, we are. So I wrote the letter, and then his wife called me the next day, and she goes, Kristine, I've read that letter 5 times, and I've cried every time I've read it.
Wow.
It makes me want to cry right now because it was really sweet. And it doesn't, it comes through me. I want to be clear about that. And so then she said, I've sent a copy to my daughter who lives in Norway. And I said, it's your letter, go do it. And she goes, well, my daughter's crying. And I said, it's okay. They're healthy tears. And so then about a week later, the son called, and he says, Dad, is that letter true? I got it. But do you really mean what you say? And the father goes, you know what? I can't write worth a lick, but I will tell you every single word in that letter came from my heart.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
3 weeks later, yeah. So 3 weeks later, the son calls him from France, and now the son's suddenly engaged. Believe it or not, he's got his fiance and everything, and the dad goes, "Is everything all right?" That was his first reaction, and the father or the son says, "Yes, Dad, everything's wonderful. I just needed to hear your voice." The father was so pleased, he drove over to my office just to tell me that. So all the years, this power struggle that they were in went on for years. The son feeling like the father never respected him or appreciated all of what he had done and how he had earned his way through life, and all the goodies that the son had earnestly worked towards and was trying to prove to his dad that he was a good man. And the father loved his son dearly, but he still had that old pattern of feeling responsible and having to tell everybody how to live their life and what to do. So this kind of intervention, which I call inspired heart letters, was just the perfect elixir for this situation. I've written letters for people, Debbie. It's been going on 15 years from all over the United States. And how they've gotten in touch with me has been word of mouth. And I've written hundreds of letters now. And so I'm happy to announce my new book, Relationshift, The Right Words for What You Really Want to Say, is now out on Amazon, a new book. And John Gray's endorsed me, Dr. Christiane Northrup, Ariel Ford, and Catherine Woodward Thomas. I'm so proud of it. It's like the angels have lined up and said, yeah,
Yay.
You're doing it,
And it's such an important topic. I really feel like, there's not one person that isn't related to someone in some way on the planet. Really, life happens collectively. And I think a lot of times we kind of walk around and think we're doing this thing on our own. And there's us, and there's like the other people out there, and some of them we feel closer to and some we feel less close to. But the truth is that we're not doing any of it alone, that we have a collective mind share, right? We have a collective unconscious we share. We've got, everything that we've built, even our cities, our homes, our society, like the global world, our environment, everything it's a joint collective effort, even if we may or may not even want it to be, right? It's just the way it is. And so it's a primary fundamental skill set to be able to resolve conflict and create positive relationships. And I feel like it's one that a lot of us really aren't taught. We kind of learn by watching, right? but it's like by default, and we learn through major media, which doesn't usually help a lot, right? Because a lot of the characters that are played are not necessarily very functioning role models. And so I think it's such an important piece is to have tools and skill sets and things that we can use to help us to better communicate, because the better we communicate, the more that we love, the more we can get out of that ego place and move from the soul place, the better that we are as a collective and as a world and as a human race, really. So I honor you for doing that work, and I totally get why the angels are aligning to support that.
Well, thank you so much for your support on that. I think it boils down to don't build the walls because you're going to have to tear them down. And that takes a lot of energy. Building walls, tearing them down. How about, wouldn't it be nicer just to open up a window and just kind of flow and be there? And how that all comes about, though, is when we've achieved a point of trust. Trust is the fundamental ingredient to anything, any other attribute, kindness, goodwill, generosity, gratitude, all of that, forgiveness, acceptance, all those wonderful characteristics or accolades are all based on trust, or they come from a sense of trust. If they don't, then they're not true. So if you want to be genuine, then genuinely trust that you signed up for your lessons, that you trust that you are divinely protected, trust that you are, from the divine, that you are here for a reason, and enjoy your life on purpose. Discover a purpose. It doesn't have to be the purpose, but if you have a bucket list, even if you have something where you want to move outside of yourself to contribute, that's great. Whatever your soul's urge is, if it's, taking care of an animal, whatever. I think that, again, go back to our frequency, our vibration. They know that it's been out for the last 30, 40 years. Omni magazine came out with measuring the auric field. So we know we are electromagnetic. What are we magnetizing towards us? What current are we putting out there? And a wonderful way of bridging the gap, of creating healings and enhancements in our connections with others, is through communicating from the heart. So that's, I think, what I'm blessed to do, is to help people locate their higher heart, to develop compassion, to get out of your own way, to look down upon whatever the situation at hand is through that broader lens, through the mountaintop, if you will, and look at life as theater and what role you've cast yourself in. And are you tired of playing that role? Because no one is stuck in anything. It's always a choice. So choosing another role might be advisable. So, for instance, the dad doesn't have to be the nagging father. Now he gets to be the compassionate, soft, huggy bear kind of dad, or whatever. So some of the relationship issues that I write for, I write love letters, which I absolutely adore doing that. I help people that need to move on from a relationship that truly is dysfunctional for them, is toxic, but they need to walk away in grace. So again, they don't have any entrails with them. They're not going to repeat the same situation with a different character, but they really need to have completion, heartfelt completion. That's important. I write letters for married people who want to perhaps reheat the souffle in their marriage, right? And they get distracted and they forget, okay, we have this family now, or we have our careers, or what have you, but why are we with each other? We're here to nurture this entity called our marriage, or our relationship, or our partnership, and that's a separate entity. I also have written letters for people that need to move on after a divorce or a severe breakup, but where there's children. So co-parenting, after the split, what about the kids, and creating a sense of family and legacy around that. Also, I write for blended family issues. We don't always choose the families we marry into, and the relatives and in-laws that we inherit, or the stepkids. And sometimes there can be misunderstandings or agendas that are not readily addressed or even known. And I help a lot with that. And also, I help people that when there's a loved one who passes on, transitions, and they're not prepared, or there's unfinished business. I actually have written quite a few eulogies. There's also friendships that cross lines and have had fallouts. One of my biggest letter needs requests is for estrangement issues. You cannot believe how many people haven't spoken to their children, their sister, their brother, their parent, their friend for even decades. I mean, I helped one mom who hadn't seen her sons in 16 years. She's now living with one of them. I had another dad who hadn't spoken to his daughter in 30 years. She's back in his life. The letter she wrote to her dad was so touching. I cried when I read it. uh, it seems like everywhere I go, when I bring up the letter writing, because it is such a difficult communication, or perceived as a difficult communication, to cross the bridge, because there is so much trepidation and fear around that subject, around, losing that person forever, or stepping on their toe, or being offensive, or what have you, or there's a family secret that needs to be shared, and perhaps the family member never brought it up because they were trying to protect their child or their sibling. I mean, life is funnier than fiction. It really is. Some of the stories are just, they're mind blowing, and they're saddening. They're sad because time has gone by. When we can step up to the plate and actually make a difference. At times, Devi, I'll write a letter for someone and they don't even send it on because they read the letter and it's like I've read their soul, and they see things suddenly very clearly, and they're not compelled to try to create something with the relationship. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing things so clearly now. I no longer want to be with this person, or whatever. Mm-hmm. I never dictate what someone should or should not do. I never set their goal or their intention. In my book, I help people to dial into what their true intention really is. So instead of the ego getting in the way, let's back it up here. What are you really needing? What's your soul? What's your heart's desire? So
that's beautiful. I love it. I love that you give that gift to someone, because the completion that comes when you actually have those open loops in a relationship, or when you have those, conversations that maybe you're needing reflected back to yourself that you can't even see. And maybe a place where you're not even going to have the communication is huge. And it just affects every area of our lives when we do that. I'd love to talk a little bit about, for spiritual entrepreneurs, one of the things that I've noticed is that it's not true for every spiritual entrepreneur, but for a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs, there's a challenge with setting what we call boundaries. And earlier in this discussion, you were talking about walls, like it's better to have a window to go through. And I think a lot of times there's just like a vacant space between the spiritual entrepreneur and the other person. Not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, I think sometimes there's an opportunity to speak truth that isn't spoken out of fear of hurting someone, or out of fear of abandonment, or out of fear of whatever the fear or consideration is that the person has, not wanting to look bad, whatever it is, right? There's a withholding of that, and it creates that kind of behind the scenes tension and challenges in relationships that doesn't get resolved, or people tend to overextend and do things that actually really impact them. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that topic, and maybe what some of your suggestions are around how to have either healthy boundaries. I don't know if that's what you would suggest, or what you would recommend in those circumstances for the spiritual entrepreneur.
Yes, I feel it's really important to know what your boundaries are, and to maintain those. And without feeling like, gee, I haven't given enough. Mm-hmm. If you're as spiritual entrepreneurs, it's because we're giving of ourselves, we're giving of our talents, we're putting our heart and soul in what we do. However, we have to have enough left over for us. So again, as I said, being your own best friend, honoring yourself first, there's nothing that can be said that's more important than that. If you have filled your own tank, as they say, and you've overfilled it, you're good to yourself. You take care of yourself. You do whatever spiritual practice, or get your massage, or eat the healthy food, or have loving relationships, whatever it is that feeds your soul. If you've got an abundance of that, then you're going to have people in the world, in business, et cetera, that of course, not all of them are chi vampires, but they may overstep their bounds and start tugging on your energy. If you've got an abundance of energy, those tuggings are not going to be as devastating as if you're running around with your tank half empty. Then you're going to start feeling really dragged down, overextended, fatigued, stressed out. So that's not honoring you or your work or your path. So that would be number one. I think also discernment is important. If we show up with living in integrity, knowing ourselves, and that we stumble across particular folks that we either have to deal with in our profession as clients or coworkers, and they are negative, and they are, you can almost find yourself dreading encountering them. It could be that the universe is telling you, this is not your tribe. You don't have to be nice, or not to be nice, but you don't have to hang out with people that are not in a collaborative mode with you. So if we want to look at our happiness quotient and how to really find happiness, we don't have to give ourselves away in the process. Mm. And so having discernment doesn't make you a bad person. It's a huge world. We've got how many billions on the planet? Finding the people that you mutually, it's a give and take, is healthy. Don't hang out with unhealthy entanglements. Having said that, you can honor yourself and the other individual by being fearless enough to share where you're at. And it can simply start off with, I'm feeling like this. I may not be correct. I want to inquire with you so we can look and see if we're on the same page. Or is there something that you're not aware of? Giving the benefit of the doubt rather than going into the land of assumptions. Oh, this person is just really always dragging me down because they're so needy. So if we start to develop these ideas, these notions, these quote unquote judgments about people, that can also color our experience in negative ways. But if we can switch it over and use again that discernment, and by the way, it never hurts to be in gratitude. And being in gratitude might include, I'm so grateful you always show up on time. Something simple like that can shift the dynamic where the person may be struggling with not really loving themselves. And so bullies and targets or victims, if you want to use that term, bystanders, it's all a perceived limited sense of power. What would it be like if we all felt powerful? We wouldn't have people dragging us down or, finding those real ick factors with others. It would be more copacetic. I believe that to be true. In the meantime, live in grace and extend yourself out as far as you desire without allowing others to pull on your energy, to pull on who you are. You don't have to. God doesn't want you to. He wants us all, she wants us all to honor our own, lovability, our own selves.
It's beautiful. I love the powerful conversation too. Like if we all felt more powerful, what would the world be like if we're in that place? Speaking of some of that, the whole Me Too movement has been pretty eye-opening in terms of the amount of people that have maybe not been empowered in certain circumstances. I know myself, I wrote my own post. We've all had, I think, especially as women, we've had our own experiences around different things at different times. What are some of your suggestions around like that work personal line for women, especially, and men, I'm not ignoring that happens to some men too. But what would you say around that?
Okay. so funny. I had a feeling that you were going to ask me something like
I had no idea that was coming.
So weird. Okay. So I'm not surprised. I mean, I thought you were going to ask me that before we met today. All right. So
funny.
Because that is a subject that's also close to my personal experience, close to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important to, again, pull back rather than getting into the muck, because it's real easy. It's a slippery slope to get in there, and then you find yourself on the defensive or avoiding people at work because you don't want to have any confrontations with them, or any number of ways to either do the fight or flight routine. But stepping back from it, looking at, all right, what's really going on, perhaps addressing that person. If you do something in written form, that can be powerful. It's really important to take a look at the mechanisms of what's going on. For example, I worked in schools for years and encountered my own mean girl stuff. Or there was at one school, there was a little boy. He was 11. He was African American, gorgeous kid. And he was in an emotionally disturbed program, but he had no apparent emotional disturbance. His father had been incarcerated some years prior. And during that time of family upheaval, this boy had resorted to physical altercations with other kids. So they put him in this severely emotionally disturbed program, and he's a straight A student. He's doing really well. He's playing sports in the community, lives with his mom and his grandmother. And he said, I'm going to middle school and I don't want to, be in this emotionally disturbed program. So I approached his teacher, and I'd given the kid all the assessments, and I said, let's let him step out a little bit, and we'll have somebody watch him from afar. But he's had no incidents whatsoever, no negative maladaptive behaviors in 3 years. Anyway, long story short, the teacher disagreed with me and literally was spitting in my face on the job.
Wow.
Had followed me into my office, where the speech and language teacher called, thinking he was hitting me. That's what a rage this guy got in. And it was all about him thinking that somehow I was telling him how to do his job, or who knows. But people get weird like that. And I'm looking at it like, here, I'm looking at the interests of this boy. And I think I'm assuming, just based on my experience, that this teacher was looking at himself like, oh, I'm not doing my job right. Or, oh, you're trying to tell me that I'm maintaining a student that doesn't need to be in my program when he does. So it's, getting into these feuds over egocentric needs is really cuckoo. Sometimes I think it's the universe saying, you know what, you don't need to be around this. I mean, we really have to take stock of the whys and wherefores. And I think sometimes we are just not in the right place where we need to be. And that is worth looking into, because we can change our own behaviors. We can't change the people around us. We can inspire people to change by changing our demeanor. In other words, if the pattern seems like somebody at work says cutting remarks or snide remarks or tries to embarrass you, and you fall for their gimmick and you walk away upset, that's their strange, unhealthy power play. Do you continue to stay in that environment? I would give the person a chance to change with how you're changing. So when they do say an insulting remark, either the old, I'm sorry you feel that way routine, or just countering it back with, if I told you, I really love it since you've gotten your new hairstyle, just off-put them with a random act of kindness. Mm-hmm. There are tools that we have that we can use. Again, where do I place my energy? Do I want to spend my energy paddling upstream? Or do I just, perhaps, would I be flourishing? Would I flow better in an environment that supports me, that I feel I have a kinship with my coworkers or the clients? These are questions just to take a look at. So I don't think there's any have to. I think when we have these rocks in the road and these experiences that are upsetting, that perhaps make us feel a little off balance, it's time to ponder that, to get really centered with it, to ask for guidance, to explore another modality of how you work or where you express yourself. Those are just some ideas.
It's powerful. I think it's so important too that we really do that introspective, look and saying, am I at the effect of my circumstances? Well, it may feel like it, but what's the truth, and how can I choose something different and be empowered in this situation too? And sometimes it is whistleblowing. Like, if this is something that's happening ongoing, I think sometimes you just need to call it what it is, right?
There are places, like when I was working for the school districts, I worked in several schools because that's what my job lent itself. I was actually working exclusively with severely emotionally disturbed kids out of 5 different schools. And I'll tell you, every school had its own personality. So all the schools are there with the same goal in mind, ostensibly. And they're made up of people, of souls that have their own little paths to trek on, or their lessons to learn, or whatever it is. And so there's a personality or a flavor that seems to color each place. So it may not even be the industry you're in. It just could be those souls that aren't clustered in your work environment. And once again, you can change things up with a beautiful smile, a gesture of kindness, bringing in, some healthy pastry or whatever. I don't know. But ultimately, you've got to look out for yourself and take into stock. It could be that there's this other job somewhere else that pays twice the money. And because you're staying where you're at on principle, you're, not open to receive your higher good. So I think sometimes the universe does give us a nudge. So I guess, Debbie, I would say paying attention, not ignoring, but paying attention to how things are feeling, what the landscape is at work, what game is being played here. Do I want to join? Can I change the rules? What sphere of influence, as they say, do I really have? And then go from there.
Beautiful. That's great advice. Pay attention to that advice. Oh my gosh, I got to talk to you all day about this. I think it's such an important conversation. And I know we're kind of coming up against our time. So if you could leave the spiritual entrepreneur with one piece of advice on their journey of spiritual entrepreneurship, what would it be?
I would say pat yourself on the back. Really take stock of all that you have done. I think the spiritual entrepreneur is one that has a generous soul and a big heart, and often comes from what else can I do for you? How else can I improve the planet? What more can I do? And sometimes it's just really stopping, smelling the roses, going to your favorite beach, or having that long overdue, shiatsu massage, whatever, or your toes painted, and just saying, you know what, I am love. I walk in it. I enjoy this beautiful planet. I mean, there is so much beauty we overlook by our human doingness. I think we need to balance it out with our beingness. And being happy will make our angels, who are up there picking their wings, remember, sing.
And I love it when angels sing, let me just say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And if this spiritual entrepreneur listening in would like to either get a letter written or get more of you or find your book, where would they go?
Okay, thanks for asking. So everybody get your pen out. Here's my website. It's www.inspiredheartletters.com. Inspired Heart letters. I spell my name with a K. It's Kristine, Kristine, and the last name's easy, Grant, Kristine Grant. There are many ways I can help you. I have a whole menu of different products and services. I even do online dating profile makeovers. I forgot to mention that.
Oh,
and I do cover letters for jobs. And I do some business type of letters. My specialty is coming from the heart and connecting to the heart of another in a positive way. So I will help you if you want to write your own letter. I can give you advice on that as well. I also have a little mini ebook on upgrading your own writing skills. My new book, which is Relationshift, the right words for what you really want to say, can be found on Amazon, and I hope you'll check it out. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, that shift with the relation shift, like shifting a gear, like SHIFT.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Like shifting into high gear or
exactly. Into the easy road of relationship. No, they're never 100% easy, but they'll be a lot easier with your help, I'm sure. So Kristine, you are just delightful. I've so enjoyed our time together in the green room and on the show. Yeah, I really appreciate the work you're doing in the world, and it's so important. And just remember, guys, if you are having any challenges, in a relationship, you're not stuck. There's definitely, as Kristine was saying, everything can change. So just get the help you need, get the support you need. We're all a spark of the divine here doing our journey. And we're all meant to shine as brightly as we can. So don't wait. Don't be resigned. Don't put it off for someday. Step into having the beautiful, powerful life that you want to create now. And that includes yummy, juicy relationships in all areas. So would you agree, Kristine?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, where would we be without our relationships?
That's right.
We seek connection. So let's make the best connections out there. That's what I say.
Amen. Yeah. And we're loving this relationship with you guys. Thanks for being here to join Kristine and I in this conversation today. And Kristine, just thank you for being on the show. You're a light.
Oh, thank you. It's just been such a pleasure. And thank you for giving me the floor. It was wonderful. Appreciate it so much, Devi.
I love what you did with the floor. So thanks for dancing on it.
I love that. Okay.
Well, if you're new or returning to the show and have not yet subscribed, please subscribe to receive the latest episodes as they're released. And if you love what you heard today, we'd love a great review too. Thanks so much for listening in. We'll see you next time on The Spiritual Entrepreneur. Hey there, spiritual entrepreneur. Have you ever thought about creating your own podcast and sharing your unique message with the world on a global scale? If so, I would love to have you join me in my latest course that I've developed called Podcast on Purpose. In the course Podcast on Purpose, I teach you how you can take your own message and mission and put it together on a podcast just like this one that reaches people all across the globe. If you're interested, go ahead and check out our course at podcastonpurpose.com. Thanks so much for listening in. We'll see you next time on The Spiritual Entrepreneur.